When it was announced midway through the Arsenal match last Thursday that Queen Elizabeth II had died, I immediately had what I thought was the very clever idea to do a podcast episode that was all about songs that are about the Queen. So I went online and I started researching, and I discovered very, very quickly that my idea was not so clever, and that every music publication in existence had had the same idea and already published their story. So I'm not as smart as I thought, but you know what? We're going to do it anyways, because it gives us an opportunity to talk about some interesting music and contemplate a little bit of history. And as you know, kids, those are my jams. And I'll tell you all about it on the other side. Hello, you're listening to the John Huff Podcast. Oh, yay. I think I've said before that it can be really, really tough to find your way into one of these episodes. I think I referenced a Billy Connolly thing about coming on is the hardest part. Being on, no big deal. Staying on, not a problem at all. But coming on. This is my second go at coming on to this episode. It's difficult sometimes to just catch the flow, man, and then weave it all together. I do script some of the stuff. I don't script most of it. And so sometimes you lock in right away, and sometimes you just fumble around and then hope you kind of find your way. And I'm in a fumbly state right now. It's a fumbly week, okay? Because I don't really know what to say about Queen Elizabeth. I have no real strong attachment either way. But the thing about it is that lots of people in the world have a very strong attachment one way or the other to Queen Elizabeth. She was, to put it mildly, a polarizing figure. And maybe not even as an individual, but as someone who was symbolic of a polarizing institution, which is the monarchy. The monarchy in England, monarchies everywhere. Queen Elizabeth was, at least at a time, and maybe even when she died, the most famous woman on planet Earth. And possibly the most photographed woman on planet Earth. Kim Kardashian might be trying to take that crown from her, no pun intended, but I'm not sure selfies count. I'm willing to bet here, sitting in my little studio, contemplating the death of Queen Elizabeth II, that Lilibet never took a selfie in her life. I'm willing to bet that. So the most selfied person on Earth might be Kim Kardashian, I'm not sure. Pretty sure Queenie never took a selfie. Could be wrong about that, and we'll probably never know, kids. There's just so much about her that we'll never know. I have no strong attachment either way, all right? But there are people in the world for whom Queen Elizabeth II was not the hero that some people in Britain and in the English Commonwealth, the British Commonwealth, would have you believe she was, all right? Go to certain parts of Africa, go to certain parts of the Middle East, go to certain parts of India, go to certain parts of North America and speak to indigenous people here, and they will say Queen Elizabeth was pure evil. Maybe not the Queen herself, but the institution of the monarchy as being symbolic of colonialism and suppression and subjugation and cruelty, all right? Maybe even genocide, depending on who you talk to, all right? So this was a polarizing woman, symbolic of a polarizing institution. And you can even go to parts of England where you will find people who were not impressed with the Queen. Again, as a symbol in England of a class system that dominated there for centuries and possibly still does, okay? There are people in England born into what we might call the lower classes and never allowed to escape their place in a very hierarchical English society, which of course starts with the Queen, the King, royalty at the top, and goes through your nobles, etc., etc., etc. This goes back centuries, kids, to feudalism and beyond, right? And it still exists in England today, I think, where if you're a lower class person, quote unquote lower class person, if you were born into poverty, if you were born into a kind of menial life, you can reasonably expect to maintain that menial place in society. It's your station. This is unfamiliar, at least theoretically, to those of us in North America who grew up, again, theoretically, in a society where all things were possible. This might be America's great gift to the world. You can come here and you've got at least a shot at improving your lot in life. All right? I think in England, in Britain, that's not really been the philosophy. All right? That's not really how society has been founded. The tradition is you're born in this segment, you remain in this segment. And this becomes a thing that you internalize. This becomes a perspective and a belief, right? And it plays itself out over generations. And at the top of that pyramid is the royal family. And so there are people in Britain who are at the bottom of said pyramid, taking a look at the top and saying, why on earth should those people be born into such privilege? Why should they have access to such wealth and opportunity and adulation simply by accident of birth? We don't really get that in North America, but maybe we should, man. Because don't we treat our royalty in much the same way? What is North American royalty? That is the uber, super duper wealthy, famous people. And if you are the child of a super duper wealthy, famous person, don't you reasonably expect to be a super duper wealthy, famous person too? Because A, the money is there. The resources are there for that to happen. But maybe even more importantly, the belief is there that that can happen. That is just life to a person who is born into that life. So if you are the child of a billionaire, if you are the product of a billion-dollar family, that's just normal life. And so why wouldn't you expect that your normal life will also be a billionaire kind of life, right? It plays out in much the same way. It just doesn't really have the titles here. But you see it everywhere, right? Look at how many professional athletes have children who are professional athletes. Why is that? Well, it's A, because they have the genetics to perform at that kind of level and probably the genetic predisposition to develop that genetic potential. Because again, that's part of the genetics and the opportunities to do so, but also the belief. Of course you think you can be a professional hockey player if everybody you ever met in your life is a professional hockey player. If you're Shane Hawkins, of course you can walk out at 15 years old in front of 80,000 people at Wembley Stadium and sit in with the Foo Fighters and play My Hero and crush it and not even blink because you spent your whole freaking life standing on the stage looking at 80,000 people and everybody you know is a Foo Fighter, and that's just normal life, man. Isn't this how it is for everybody? Most of us, especially at 15 years old, A, don't have the ability that Shane Hawkins has, product of his genetics, nor the instruction that he probably had, product of his nature and nurture, and this perspective on life. Of course you go out and play to 80,000 people. Everybody he knows goes out and plays to 80,000 people. That's just life. That's just real, normal life. And if you are born into that, you have that perception, and it's reasonable to think that that's what your life will be. If you're Josh Kroenke and you find yourself as the voice of ownership, American ownership at Arsenal, British English Football Club, you know, most people grow up thinking, I'll never be the voice of ownership at a major, huge, enormous international football club. It's just not in the cards for me. Josh Kroenke doesn't think that. Why? Because ownership is his dad. His dad is the billionaire Stan Kroenke, with maybe the worst mustache in all of sports. And so you grow up, your dad owns Arsenal, your dad owns the LA Rams, your dad owns the Colorado Avalanche, the Colorado Rapids, your dad builds multi-billion-dollar football stadiums in Los Angeles. Well, why wouldn't you think that it's possible in your life to be the voice of ownership at a giant football club or to build huge real estate projects? You grow up this way, and your perception molds to this reality. Doesn't everybody have an ownership voice at a major professional football club? Isn't that just the way life is? No, it isn't for most people. And a lot of those people in the bottom rung, especially in societies where you can't really get off that rung, you know, you need an extraordinary talent to be able to do that, or extraordinary good fortune. See Beatles, and footballers. This is the way you get out of your station, you know, in England. Traditionally, you know, it takes an extraordinary talent and a bit of luck, maybe a lot of luck, man. And so if you're at the bottom of this ladder, if you're at the bottom of this pyramid and you're looking up at Queenie and the royals, especially now, at least the first Elizabethan age, all right, roughly the last half of the 16th century, the age that brought you Shakespeare, kids, and 500 or 600 years later is the bane of existence for every schoolboy and girl, every school person, being saddled reading Shakespeare at 14 and not understanding a freaking word. And then they would ask people to read the parts. And some people weren't great readers of modern English. You know, reading is a talent like any other, kids. Some people have a disposition for it, some people don't. Let's drop those kids into trying to read what is like Middle English, Shakespearean English. Good luck, man. Is it any wonder we all hated Shakespeare? You know what I mean? I came to love Shakespeare and eventually taught Shakespeare, but hey, I'm special, man. The first Elizabethan age, the Queen actually had authority and some power. All right, Queen Elizabeth was the real deal. The first Queen Elizabeth. By the time we get to second Queen Elizabeth, 1952, all right, the power of the monarchy no longer exists. The power is utterly symbolic. All right? So it's like you're a person who's on the bottom of society, you know, bottom level, one of the grunts, you know, like my ancestors, and you're looking up at the top at this person who doesn't even wield supreme executive power, doesn't even wield executive power, and yet you have this enormous wealth, this enormous celebrity, this enormous privilege, and you're looking at that and saying, why should this be? I mean, I ask myself that question now, living in an utterly different place, in an utterly different perceived society where theoretically everything's wide open, you know? But I still look at the monarchy and I go, why does this exist now? They haven't had power for 300 years. Why does this exist now? And beyond that, why is my head of state the symbolic head of state of another sovereign nation? Like, now, isn't now the time to question why on earth the monarch who is powerless of another nation is the head of my nation? Like, it doesn't make any sense. So most of us look at the monarchy with a certain curiosity, if we look at it at all. And then other people are caught up in kind of the romance and the drama and perhaps the history of the monarchy. okay. All right, that's a curiosity at least. But there are people in England who see the monarchy as the enemy, who see the monarchy as symbolic of a class system that is unfair and unjust. And then you go out into the world and you see the monarchy in some places as symbolic of repression and colonialism and atrocity and tragedy. There were people who celebrated the death of Queen Elizabeth II for those reasons. For me, she's a picture on the wall and a ubiquitous part of life since I've been alive and since most people have been alive. My dad was in the Navy in the 1960s, swearing an oath of allegiance to the Queen, who was the Queen then. She predates Elvis, for crying out loud. She's just been a fact of life. And now she's gone. And you know what it changes? Nothing. But being as she was such a divisive person and such a famous person and such a symbolic representative of a system of government, a lot of songs were written about Queen Elizabeth, and that's a compelling study. So I'm just going to do some of them. I'm just going to look at some of them right now. This might turn out to be a short episode. Maybe that's okay. Maybe you're busy right now. School's back. And we have to begin. If we're going to talk about Queen Elizabeth, there's only one place to begin, kids. And that, of course, is 1977 with God Save the Queen by the Sex Pistols. All right, the punk music, we've talked a lot about punks and the punk movement. Well, a lot of the political side of the punks was all about this class system we're talking about. This system that does not favor everyone. This system that keeps some people down and keeps some people up. And there's a lot of flag waving, around Britain and the monarchy. And a lot of punks looked at that and said, what are we waving flags for, kids? What are we celebrating here that's so great for the rest of us? So great for those of us who can't find jobs, who live in poverty, who maybe live in violence, for whom alcoholism is a problem. Some of us a lot of us actually lead rough, difficult, challenging lives, man. Why are we waving flags at the Queen? Why are we celebrating the super rich people? Life ain't fair for all of us. It's not so great here. And the punks were about overturning that. The punks were about protesting this system, protesting the unequal distribution of wealth and resources, saying, we want a piece of this too, man. And if we can't get it because the system suppresses us, then we're just going to kick doors open until we get our piece, man. And that's what the punk movement was all about. The punk movement was about, we don't like these traditions. We don't like traditions of dress. We don't like traditions of manners. We don't like what's expected of us as good citizens. You don't get to tell us how to live, man. That was the essence of punks. And we're going to kick stuff over that you find sacred because that's how we get in your face. And the most sacred thing was the Queen. The most sacred thing was that symbol of the monarchy, which is so out of touch and out of date with modern reality in 1970s Britain, man. So along come the Sex Pistols to shake up the mainstream, and this punk movement was about looking outrageous. They wanted people to shake their heads as they walked by, the safety pins, the mohawks, the sneer, the snottiness. It's like, we are modern Britain, and your outdated modes of thinking don't serve anybody. So here's a wake-up call, kids. And we're going to start with your precious Queen. What do the Sex Pistols have to say? God save the Queen, the fascist regime. They made you a moron, potential H-bomb. God save the Queen. She ain't no human being. There's no future in England's dreaming. Sneer, man. You can't even read those lyrics without sneering. Don't be told what you want to, and don't be told what you want to need. There's no future for you. God save the Queen. We mean it, man. We love our Queen. God saves. God save the Queen, because tourists are money and our figurehead is not what she seems. Oh, God save history. God save your mad parade. Oh, Lord, God have mercy, all crimes are paid. When there's no future, how can there be sin? We're the flowers in the dustbin. We're the poison in your human machine. We're the future, your future. God save the Queen. Sneer, man. Sneer at all of this symbolic figurehead. All the money that goes to it, all the attention that goes to it, all the wealth that's generated by it. All the dreaming, man. All the fake importance of it all. It's not real. It's a freaking illusion designed for tourism and attention. That's not reality. Reality's over here, where we're dying, where we're starving, where we're hungry, where we're freaking angry. You know, you people who have the privilege of looking up to the Queen and celebrating all of this pomp and circumstance. You're living in an illusion and there's no future. There's no future for the rest of us, and we're angry about that. And what strikes me about God Save the Queen, the Sex Pistols' God Save the Queen, is just what a great freaking song it is. Even if you're not down with the message or don't care about the lyrics, what a great song. I mean, it is quintessential 1970s punk rock England. Great driving guitar riff. It's exceptionally well produced. You know, I don't know if I was listening to a remaster maybe, but the production on this is dynamite. It sounds great. The guitars sound great. The drums sound great. You didn't always get that in the 70s, man, but this song sounds great. And it is so catchy. It is quintessential British punk rock. And what's interesting is that I read that many years later, there was an interview with Johnny Rotten, and they were talking about this song. And Johnny Rotten said, you know, I don't bear any personal animosity towards Elizabeth herself. It's the institution of the monarchy that I hate and that I was attacking. The song was a massive hit, but it didn't get to #1. And some people say there was some manipulation involved in that. Didn't make it to BBC #1. Made it, I believe, to #2. But the scuttlebutt says it was 100% the top-selling record the week of the Queen's Jubilee, 1977. 25 years on the throne, the week that they celebrated that, scuttlebutt says God Save the Queen by the Sex Pistols was the #1 selling single, and they wouldn't allow, BBC wouldn't allow it to be #1 that week. Political machinations. A lot of record stores, a lot of chains banned it. They wouldn't sell it. All right, this is so outrageous. This is such an attack on the Queen and this illusion we hold precious. A lot of places wouldn't sell it. And in like Waterstones or whatever, the list of the top songs came out. And so whatever it was #1, like a Rod Stewart song. #2, the line was blank. Everybody knew it was God Save the Queen by the Sex Pistols, but it was blank. What a weak protest. You know, this is exactly what the Sex Pistols were talking about. And of course, that always fuels sales and attention, man. Controversy works. When Tipper Gore came along and started putting the parental warning stickers, the parental advisory stickers on the records back in the 80s, those records flew off the shelves, man. Thanks for all the advertising, Tipper. Thanks for all the advertising, Waterstones, and the rest of those places that wouldn't sell the record. All it did is fuel demand. And God Save the Queen was a massive hit, and it remains an iconic song. An iconic punk song, an iconic British song, partly because of all that controversy, man. But apparently Johnny Rotten didn't hate Elizabeth. Johnny Rotten hated the institution of the monarchy, and we will see that repeated over and over and over, all right? God Save the Queen. Now, the Beatles came along first, of course, with Her Majesty. 1969, Abbey Road, like 14 seconds after the last song ends, all of a sudden acoustic guitar starts playing, and there's a 25-second ditty that they called Her Majesty, and that is Paul McCartney playing this little, like, kind of almost like a ragtime dance hall guitar number, singing about the Queen, and she's a lovely gal, and I'm going to make her mine. And what's significant about that is that it is considered among the first ever hidden tracks on a record, all right? This was not listed in the songs. Nobody was expecting this. And at the end of the record, along comes this 14-second ditty about the Queen. How about that? And I guess Paul doesn't mind Queenie at all. And of course, the Beatles met the Queen. He's going to make her mine. Let's jump to 1985. The Housemartins. I didn't know anything about the Housemartins. I had never heard of this band. They are an English indie rock band. And I had no idea about them, but I started digging around. And 1985, they released a tune called Flag Day. This is the Housemartins. And they are... It's an interesting song, an interesting band. I intend to listen a little bit more to them. I've heard different versions of this song. There's one on YouTube that's like got a great, really nice piano introduction. And then I think the real song, the single version, is like a guitar-driven indie rock tune. And it's called Flag Day. And so I dug a little bit into what Flag Day is. And apparently in Britain, there are days where charities are out on the street collecting. And they got little flags. They call it Flag Day. So you put your spare some change, governor. They put that in the box that you're carrying. Give you a little flag, walk away. The Housemartins take this concept and they're like, you know, there's so much wealth. Stop me if you've heard this. There's so much wealth in so few hands. Why don't you go to the wealthy people, you know? And there's a lyric in the song that's profound. So you thought you'd like to change the world, decided to stage a jumble sale for the poor, for the poor. It's a waste of time if you know what they mean. Try shaking a box in front of the Queen. 'Cause her purse is fat and bursting at the seams. It's a waste of time if you know what they mean. Too many hands in too many pockets, not enough hands on hearts. Too many ready to call it a day before the day starts. So you thought you'd like to see them healed. Got Blue Peter to stage an appeal for the poor, for the poor. It's a waste of time if you know what they mean. Try shaking a box in front of the Queen 'cause her purse is fat and bursting at the seams. It's a waste of time if you know what they mean. Flag Day, Flag Day. It's a scam, man. Look at the super wealthy people. Look at the Queen with all of her money, the richest woman on planet Earth. All of those jewels, all of those palaces, all of that wealth. She doesn't even have any power. She doesn't even have any authority. Why don't you go to her and get her to give you the money? Because we're tapped out over here, man. We're an indie rock band. Why don't you go to the Queen? We'll try shaking your box in front of her and see what happens, you know? There's a resentment there. And it's a cool song, all right? This is the Housemartins Flag Day, and it is an indie rock song. You know, it kind of precedes or harkens to the kind of Britpop stuff that came along in the 90s. It looks a little bit back at the new wave stuff and the post-punk stuff that came along in the late 70s. Really, really cool song. I like it a lot. I dig the indie rock, man, and it takes a shot. It takes a shot at the pomp and circumstance and pageantry of the monarchy and people's fascination with it and says, why? What is the point of this? You know, what is it serving in a really practical way? And it's a protest song, and it's a good one. Really dig Flag Day by the Housemartins, all right? But it gets worse than that. It gets way more aggressive than that. Just a year later in 1986 with, I mean, you know it, right? The Queen is Dead, Morrissey and the Smiths. Woo! This one smokes, baby. You want to talk about lyrics? This one smokes. Let's take a look. First of all, for those of us who are First World War aficionados, the song begins with some audio pulled from a movie, all right? 1962, The L-Shaped Room. And so you've got Cicely Courtnidge singing Take Me Back to Dear Old Blighty. That is a First World War song, came out around 1916. You know, there are a lot of winsome, longing, homeward-looking First World War songs for a lot of good reasons, man, because if you are, you know, the fourth day in to a 7-day stretch in the frontline trench somewhere in France, and your buddies are all getting their heads blown off, you're not even fighting battles. You're just day-to-day life on the line, and you're seeing your buddies' heads get blown off, and they're calling that officially wastage. They called it wastage, kids, all right? Hundreds of people died every day just maintaining the line. Occasional shelling, snipers, disease, whatever. You know, people, they didn't have to be going over the top to get killed. You know, just in the day-to-day line of work, some people would get killed every dang day. And they called that wastage. You know, not exactly battle casualties, just wastage. So if all your friends around you are becoming wastage, and you're living for weeks at a time in a ditch, and underneath you is a wooden duckboard, and underneath that is just bodies, and it's horrendous and stinky and dangerous and smelly and depressing and awful, wouldn't you think wistfully of dear old Blighty? Blighty was the colloquial name, the affectionate name that the troops gave England. And that ties in some way to India, and I'm not sure the origins, the etymology. I'm not sure the origins of Blighty, but they call it dear old Blighty. And the troops pined for a Blighty wound. I got a Blighty. You know what a Blighty is? A Blighty is a wound that's not going to kill you, but is bad enough to take you out of the line. You might need 3 or 4 months of rehab back home in Blighty. So you got a Blighty wound. I'm out of here, but I'm not dead. All my limbs are still attached. You know, I just got to do some healing. I got a Blighty. And so the troops pined for Blighty, and they wrote songs like Take Me Back to Dear Old Blighty, and they used to sing them in beer halls together, you know, back behind the line when they were on reserve duty. And so it's interesting that this song, The Queen is Dead, starts with a rendition of Dear Old Blighty. You know, this idealized version, this wistful longing for an idealized England. And then in comes the song. Farewell to this land's cheerless marshes, hemmed in like a boar between archers. Her very lowness with her head in a sling, I'm truly sorry, but it sounds like a wonderful thing. Morrissey coming in hard. Now, Morrissey always had a thing about the monarchy, all right? I believe he's descended from Irish folks. You know, a lot of people in Ireland were pretty pleased when the Queen died. You know, there's a lot of history here, kids. Morrissey came in hard at the monarchy. Same thing as the Housemartins. This whole concept of why are these people elevated, celebrated? Why the fascination? Why is this allowed? You know, this is unethical. This is immoral. That people should be born into such privilege, although all of us know back here in North America, people are still born into privilege. We just don't give them titles. The Queen is Dead is just a great song. You know, politics aside, even if you're not into the lyrics or what it's about, it's just a great song. The bass guitar playing on The Queen is Dead is dynamite. Apparently this song came out of like a jam at rehearsal. That happens sometimes, kids. You know, sometimes get together with your band and don't rehearse the tunes you've already got. Just start jamming. You know, everybody's band kind of started that way. Freeform jamming. We don't even know if we have a band here. We're just hanging out together and playing music. We'll do that and record it. Record it, because I've seen it happen many times where we're just doing a freeform jam and then it turns into something really freaking cool and then nobody can remember what it was. Happens all the time. This song, The Queen is Dead, apparently came out of something like that. To me, it sounds, again, like the Housemartins song. It kind of goes back to things like Joy Division. You know, it kind of harkens to what's coming with Britpop. It's a guitar song, tremendous bass line, tremendous bass guitar work on this freaking song. Really, really dig it. And again, they're talking about the class distinctions. And with Morrissey, you never quite know. First two, and so I checked all the registered historical facts, and I was shocked into shame to discover how I'm the 18th pale descendant of some old queen or other. Now, the interesting thing about Morrissey is that his sexuality has always been ambiguous and speculated upon. I think the official game is that he will say I'm not sure the exact term for this, but he's just like, I'm attracted to humans. Gender don't matter, all right? I'm attracted to people, right? And so, of course, the word queen is a derogatory. It's now, I don't know if it always was, but it is now a derogatory term for homosexual. And so there's speculation that some of the references to the queen in this song are actually self-references by Morrissey and to his sexuality. I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. When you are tied to your mother's apron, no one talks about castration. Whoa! I think that was Morrissey talking about his own relationship with his mother, but there's a lot of shots here. There's a lot of shots at, again, the monarchy, the pomp, the circumstance, and what is it all about, man? Past the pub that saps your body and the Churchill snatch your money. The Queen is dead, boys, and it's so lonely on a limb. Past the pub that wrecks your body and the church, all they want is your money. The Queen is dead, boys, and it's so lonely on a limb. Life is very long when you're lonely. Life is very long when you're lonely. This is a despondency. This is looking at a system that keeps people down, keeps people poor, keeps people drunk. And the Queen sits at the top of it all, man. This is not a shot at Elizabeth. This is a shot at the monarchy and a modern world where does this have any real place? And is it fair? And is it right? Great song, The Queen is Dead by the Smiths. Really dig that tune. Really dig the Housemartins. Really dig the Sex Pistols, man. I'm going to do one more. I'm going to do two more, all right? The first is Leon Rosselson. Leon Rosselson wrote, he was a satirist, is a satirist and a folk singer and kind of a protest singer. Back in the 60s, this whole thing started to happen with British satire. You know, Monty Python comes along at the same time. And there's a lot of satire happening, and Leon Rosselson's songs fit right in, man. So kind of satire, kind of protest. Leon Rosselson wrote a song called On Her Silver Jubilee. Silver Jubilee was 25 years in power, right around the same time that the Sex Pistols were singing God Save the Queen. And it's kind of the history of Elizabeth's reign. I can't do all the lyrics, it takes all freaking day. But this is a protest song, you know? This is, you think of 60s protest songs, you think of Dylan, you think of those kinds of folk songs, acoustic guitar, and that's exactly what this is. And it's got a very repeated melody. You know, the idea was that you make these songs with simple, repeatable melodies so people can catch on quickly and sing along, right? This is exactly that. It sounds like a 60s protest song. I remember when my world was hardly grown, and the daughter of a dead, dull king ascended to the throne. And though I was just a lad at school, I saw it all with scorn. The solemn, sacred emptiness, the monumental yawn, and the slime exuding daily from the sycophantic slugs, and the coronation ashtrays and the coronation mugs, and the rows of ermined mummies with their maggot-eaten brains, all the swarms of bloated blowflies the majestic turd sustains. Whoa! Again, he's pointing at the pomp and the circumstance, and we're going to see it soon, kids. We're going to see it in the funeral. We're going to see it in the coronation of King Charles III. We're going to see that happen again. All the pomp and circumstance. And I will play devil's advocate here. I will play the advocate's devil. Some people draw enormous comfort from the notion of a monarch and the traditions of the monarchy. All right, this is not me taking a shot at anybody. This is me presenting songs about the Queen. That's it, and this happens to be what most of them are about. I tend to agree. I tend to agree that the rich and privileged and famous are way too celebrated in modern culture. But this is a tradition. This is a fact of life in a country for centuries, all right? I'm talking about centuries of history and tradition here. I'm not passing judgment on it, right? But we're going to see it again. We're going to see it real soon when we have the funeral, when we have the coronation of the king. And you take a look at it and you'll be like, what is happening here? When you step back objectively, it's like, you know, if you ever meet, I did, all right? I haven't talked much about this, but I have met the Queen several times. On tour in Europe, you know, you do have access to this kind of red carpet privilege. I've had it. I've had tea with the Queen. But the thing is, they bring you in, and you're supposed to have such awe and reverence of these people. And if you're a person like me, who's kind of a humanist, who tries to see everyone as equal, it's like, why should I have deference to this person just by accident of birth and title? Why should we have such celebration of accidental birth and title? I don't really get it, but I'm not here passing judgment on it. We're going to see it, take a look at it, and just kind of marvel at what we've created. You know, we've kind of created these false rules, these false rules of deference that don't exist in real life, you know? Like there was a period of time when you didn't look the monarch in the eye. You don't look the king in the eye. Now, if you go back far enough, the monarch was associated with divinity, all right? You will have heard the term divine right of kings. This concept was the king is not a man. The king is not a person. The king is basically God incarnate. And so if you grew up in a time when this was kind of the accepted perspective on things, then okay, what you're looking at is not a human, is not a man, or at very least is a person chosen and ordained by divinity to be the ruler. The king is God, or at least God's representative. So, okay, I guess you can have awe in that sense. But it's 2022, kids, all right? You know what I mean? And those of us who did not grow up in that world still, I think, chafe and still kind of shake their heads or tilt their heads like a dog trying to figure out what you're saying at this notion that I have to have extreme deference to this human being simply because that person was born into a family. And this happens everywhere, by the way. You know, this is not unique to England. This is not unique even to Canada. Happens all over the place where there are royal families or power families. Like, look at dictatorships. And, you know, there's a certain practicality to that in a dictatorship where if you look at somebody the wrong way, they might just cut your head off. As a matter of course. You got to protect yourself a little bit, but in a free and open democracy, theoretically, having this automatic and prescribed deference to somebody simply by birth seems a little bit weird to me. But you're going to see this. You're going to see the pomp and circumstance, and I'm probably going to watch the coronation out of simple curiosity. I mean, this is an historical event. And for me, of course, it always goes back to this. I watch an historical event, but I put myself 300 or 400, 500, 700 years ago at the coronation of a proper king. You know what I mean? At a king with real power, at a king who's a king, not a symbol of a king. You know what I mean? That's not a shot at Charles. That's just the time when he came along, all right? If it's 600 years ago, Charles III is the real ruler of England, and immediately he probably goes and invades Scotland. You know what I mean? So I put myself back then. Now, I've been to Westminster Abbey, all right? I've been to the places where these coronations have happened. And when I watch Charles III be coronated in front of a live studio audience brought to you by McDonald's and Coke, ladies and gentlemen, I will be placing myself hundreds of years ago, watching a proper king, a real king, ascend to the throne. And that's just me and my weird kind of historical peccadillos. But we're going to see the pomp and circumstance that Leon Rosselson's talking about, that he doesn't get, and he doesn't understand why this still exists and why we should be so deferential to these people who have no real power or authority just because tradition says we oughta. And the lyrics go on and on and on with this song. She seems so commonplace, a woman in her fuddy-duddy hats, but she doesn't stand in the bus queues or live in high-rise flats. And she doesn't ride the rush hour or cycle down the Strand, and she doesn't play maracas in the Ivy Benson Band. And she doesn't shop for bargains, and she's never on the dole. And if she does the football pools, she doesn't tell a soul. She never used to bother with the inland revenue, though she's royalty rewarded for the things she doesn't do. With palaces and properties, and to keep her in good cheer, a working wage of £36.7 million a year. A royal train, a royal plane, a costly royal yacht, and lucrative investments in God only knows what. Right? Now, he's a satirist, And he's a protest singer, and he's making some pretty good freaking points. You know, you can feed a lot of starving people with all of the wealth and money that goes into the monarchy. But again, I'm not here to take shots. I'm just sort of presenting what I suspect Leon Rosalison's talking about. And it's interesting. Told you she's a polarizing figure, kids. And there are many, many, many other songs. I like the Leon Rossalison song, by the way. You know, good old-fashioned folk protest song. Like the good old days, man. Like The Simpsons and The Dental Plan. Leon Rossalison, cool song. There's been a lot of them. There's been a lot of songs about the Queen. Some of them get pretty freaking heinous. Some of them are pretty reverential, you know, and there's like rap songs that are like wowzers. And Billy Bragg's Rule No Reason is a good one. The Stone Roses did one. The Pet Shop Boys did one called Dreaming of the Queen, which is a really freaking bizarre... It's recounting, I suppose, a surrealist dream about having tea with the Queen. And it's actually kind of a cool song, all right? It's kind of like a dark synth pop song. Pet Shop Boys. I've never been the biggest Pet Shop Boys fan, but I kind of dig that song. It's got a vibe to it that I dig. Dreaming of the Queen, visiting for tea, you and her and I and Lady Di, and the Queen said, I'm aghast. Love never seems to last, however hard you try. And Di replied that there are no more lovers left alive. No one has survived, so there are no more lovers left alive. And that's why love has died. Yes, it's true. Look, it's happened to me and you. Interesting song. Very weird, surrealist, but I kind of dig it. But the greatest song written ever about the Queen was written, strangely enough, all others pale by comparison, to the song I Hate the Bloody Queen by Canadian band The Queen Haters. The Queen Haters, you know that one? The Queen Haters was a sketch on SCTV. I believe it was 1983. And they appeared on an episode of the Mel's Rockpile show. Mel's Rockpile was an SCTV thing. Eugene Levy as Mel. And it was like a Top of the Pops kind of thing or whatever. They'd have a band come on and the kids would dance. Well, in this particular episode, they had this punk band called the Queen Haters come on to sing their song, I Hate the Bloody Queen. And it's hilarious. Martin Short is playing the lead singer. Eugene Levy's playing guitar. Andrea Martin. John Candy playing drums is so funny. He's like bald head wig and he's got bedazzled glasses on. And he's utterly stone-faced and stoic through the whole thing. You can get so much mileage out of just a look. So much comic mileage out of just a look. And so the band's playing. And it's like a Sex Pistols late 70s punk song. It's really good, actually. If you go watch the video, the song is freaking great. But it's hilarious. I've always had a dream. I'd like to meet the Queen. I'd like to punch her in the face. Yeah, that would make me laugh. And it's like totally British punk, right? They're doing the accents. They're dressed up like a 1977 punk band. And then every now and again, they'll just cut to Candy, utterly stone-faced, playing the drums in his bedazzled glasses. Just a split second, and it's a laugh every freaking time. And Martin Short crushes this as the vocalist. It's so freaking funny. I hate the bloody Queen. She makes me go to school. I hate the bloody Queen and all her bloody rules. And my favorite freaking line of all, one of the great lyrics that's ever been written in any song about anything. She taxes me to death. I can't afford me dope. I'd like to get her high. Yeah, that would make me laugh. It's so funny and stupid. I can't afford me dope. It's so funny. And it's easily the best song ever written about the Queen. The Queen Haters. I Hate the Bloody Queen. Go onto YouTube, watch it. I will put it in my show notes on my website, which you can access, john-huff.com/podcast. I do show notes there for all the episodes. It's like a blog post. And then I always throw in some ditties, you know, some goodies for you. This video will be one of them. So if you want to just go to my website and see it, you can. Otherwise, go to YouTube. The Queen Haters, I Hate the Bloody Queen. So funny, but a great song. A great punk song. And Mudhoney actually covered it for a compilation, you know? So it's like a legit song, but so stupid and funny. And the video is hilarious. Andrea Martin's hilarious. Candy is hilarious. It's so funny and stupid. the best song ever written about the Queen. I Hate the Bloody Queen by the Queen Haters. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, I didn't think I was going to get this far. As ever, I had a certain amount of material and didn't know if I was going to make it, but here we are. Once again, sneaking up on the hour. I should have done this before. I'll do it now. You can support me on Patreon if you are so inclined. Patreon.com/JohnHuffPodcast. I so much appreciate the people who have volunteered to do that. It is a $5 one tier, $5 a month to support the show on Patreon. Help me cover my costs just a little bit. You can think of it as slipping me a $1.25 tip for every episode I do of the show. If you get something out of these episodes, if you learn about new music, if you are entertained, if you are inspired, if you just like listening to somebody talk about this stuff, you enjoy what I'm doing, please consider supporting on Patreon. I definitely appreciate that. If you can't do that, if you're not inclined to do that, that's totally fine. The show will remain free and accessible wherever you enjoy fine podcasts. If you want to help in a different way, share these episodes. Share them with your friends. Tell them your friends. Word of mouth is still the best advertising. So if you got people looking for podcasts and you think they might like my show, tip them off. You can find me on Instagram, JW_Huff. You can find me on Facebook at The John Huff Podcast. You can find me on TikTok, also at The John Huff Podcast. I appreciate you listening. I hope you're doing okay. Enjoy the pomp and circumstance of the Queen and the coronation. Let me know what you think. Listen to some of this music. Tell me what you think. I want to say thanks to everybody who listened to the new King's X record last week and told me about it. A lot of new fans being born out there, which warms my cockles. I want to thank you for listening. I hope you're doing well. I'm going to shut up, shutting up. Hey, good things happen when you put yourself out there, kids. Do not forget that. And I'll check you later. Yeah. Looking forward to what the protesters out there have to say and write about King Charles III.